So a while ago I worked on a video called Merchandise That Spoiled a Movie, and in that video I talked about various pieces of merchandise through films and TV shows that spoiled an element of a movie. However, as you all know, these weren't the only pieces of material that spoiled an aspect of a film. Like, did you know that in the Shrek movie, we discover a pretty surprising twist that Princess Fiona was an ogre just like Shrek? Now clearly this was meant to be a secret. However, a Burger King toy line for one of their combos would feature a set of Shrek keychains, and one of these was a Fiona figure, which when activated would transform her into an ogre. This is not the only animated film that had a major twist revealed through a toy, as it was the same case for Toy Story 3. You see, there was a Lego set that was revealed before the film's release, and in this Lego set, there was a sequence from the movie showing Woody and Ham trapped within a trash incinerator with the character Lotso on the platform operating the machine. This was a huge spoiler for the movie, clearly portraying Lotso as an antagonistic force, something that was clearly meant to be a secret. Before the release of Sonic 3, many fans speculated if Shadow's transformation, Super Shadow, would be featured in the film. I mean, it made sense to think this, considering that in the previous film, Super Sonic made his debut. It wasn't unlikely that the Chaos Emeralds would return in the movie as well. However, many of the trailers were clearly hiding Super Shadow from the film, as perhaps the filmmakers wanted this form to be a surprise. However, Super Shadow would be confirmed to be a part of the movie come October 2024, as a toy leak would hit the internet showcasing what Super Shadow would look like in the film. And based on this design, it was pretty clear that the filmmakers created a pretty faithful rendition of Super Shadow's iconic look. There were some that believed that the Super Shadow toy leak was fake, while it was understandable to see some skepticism that toy would be confirmed to be real come early December, as another toy leak would hit the web, confirming without a doubt that Super Shadow was in the film. This was not the first time Shadow was leaked through merchandise, as the same was done with his overall design. In June 2024, an image of a Sonic toy would hit the internet. The toy was called the Ultimate Talking Sonic, and of course, it was your typical piece of merchandise you would expect from a large movie like this. However, the thing that caught most people's attention was the back of the box. At the bottom, there appeared to be a showcase of other toys in the line, and here we got our very first look at Shadow in the film before the first trailer had ever come out. Of course, since this was just a toy, that didn't really give us much indication on how he'd look in the movie itself. However, we would get a better look at Shadow's design come the next month, as a popcorn bucket would also leak to the internet. At first, many felt this leak was fake. However, when Paramount began taking the image down from various social media, it all but confirmed its legitimacy. Video game tie-ins are great, as they allow us to experience our favorite movies to a larger extent. However, there was a fundamental problem with video game tie-ins that fans had to grapple with. You see, tie-ins often release days or weeks before the film's official release, meaning that there was a potential that the plot or certain twists would be spoiled weeks in advance. Of course, tie-ins didn't often follow a movie's plot beat for beat. There were certain sequences that were massively tweaked. However, despite that, certain elements would be spoiled regardless. Take the PS2 game Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith for example. The game mostly followed the perspective of Anakin and Obi-Wan, meaning that a large portion of the film's plot would not be present, as of course these two characters aren't integral to every element of the original film. However, because of the story structure had to be changed, but still somewhat spoiled aspects of the film. For example, Mace Windu in the original film is killed by the Emperor with Force lightning. However, in the game, Anakin is the one that kills Windu instead, in the form of a boss fight. While the game itself didn't spoil the moment, it still directly spoiled the fact that Windu would die. The same can be said for the death of Count Dooku to Anakin, which also plays out a bit differently in the game, but still spoils his death regardless. video game tie-ins are not the only pieces of material that can spoil a movie's contents weeks in advance. In fact, we saw this with the comic Transformers Dark of the Moon movie adaptation. In the comic, the plot of the movie is roughly followed, though there are some significant differences. However, just like the video game tie-ins, although rough aspects of the original movie's plot are included, there are various elements that can still count as a spoiler. One of these elements was the reveal of Sentinel Prime actually working with Megatron, becoming the ultimate antagonist of the film's final arc. Now, this would be fine if the movie comic adaptation released after the movie. However, large portions of the comic were leaked onto Amazon months before the movie had come out. There's also the fact that the comic would have officially come out about a week before the release as well. This leak was so notorious at the time that Transformers adaptation comics became non-existent. Once again, it's not only comic adaptations and video games that can spoil an aspect of a film, as we established in my previous video, which you should watch. Soundtracks can also spoil a movie, especially since they can release days before the film. In this case, however, it was not a soundtrack name that spoiled the movie, but the track itself. Back in early December 2022, the soundtrack for Spider-Man No Way Home would leak onto the internet. Fans were able to listen to every piece of music from the film. However, there was one track that caught many people's attention. Track 19 was interesting because it definitively proved that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were in the movie. The track, which I won't play here, sounded like a rendition of the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield themes. It did not help that prior to this track releasing, there were many leaks of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in the film. This was the worst kept secret in Hollywood after all, so the leak of this theme wasn't all that surprising. There's also the fact that Sony began taking down posts that featured track 19, so there was no denying that this was indeed real. Anyways, if you'd like to know more about the leaks of Spider-Man No Way Home, check out this video I did before.